Alrighty, in this video what we're going to do is set up the Webpack dev server. So we are going to create a Gulp file, a Gulp task that will actually start the Webpack dev server for us, which will be awesome because then we'll be able to combine building the server, building the client, serving out the client assets, hot reloading, and running the server and restarting the server all into the same process. The only thing that won't be included is simply, oh, shut up, NVIDIA. The only thing that won't be included is simply the running of our unit tests, which we can do in a separate console window, depending on if we care or not. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the Webpack dev server from, not surprisingly, webpack-dev-server. So we're definitely going to need that guy. Then I'm going to scroll down to build client. I'm going to go underneath build client. I'm going to say function. So I'm going to say watch client. Watch client. And what this is going to do is it's first going to say var compiler equals webpack, and I'm going to pass in webpack config. So I'm passing in our configuration of webpack just like what we did before. But it's not going to automatically run our webpack just yet, because we're going to pass in this webpack compiler into an instance of a webpack dev server. So I'm going to say const server equals new webpack dev server, and I'm going to pass in the compiler, and then I'm going to pass in some options. First of all, I'm going to set the public path to /build/. I'm going to set hot to true, and then for stats, I'm going to pass in our console stats object. So our console stats object, remember, is just how we want it to print out to the console. Hot is for hot reloading. We'll take a look at that later. Then I'm simply going to say server.listen on port 8080, and I'm going to go ahead and simply say, I'm just going to pass in a callback. I don't care. It'll be an empty callback. Now that I've done the watch client, I'll go ahead and set that up over here. I'll say gulp.task client watch client. Now I should simply be able to type in gulp watch :client, and it should launch the Webpack dev server for me. Oh, client watch. Derp. All right, give it a second. Now, the Webpack dev server is a great tool, and it allows us to serve out our Webpack bundle from a server that keeps everything in memory and allows for incremental compilation. So you'll notice it took 6 seconds to compile it for the first time. It's going to take a matter of milliseconds to compile it subsequent times. I can go ahead and prove that to you. Before we even take a look at even if this is working, I'll go ahead and prove that the recompilation times are really fast. If I come in client.js and I make a change, hit Control-S, 68 milliseconds is how long it took to recompile the client. Now if I open up the browser, I should be able to go to localhost 8080 /build /app.js. And as you see right here, I get the actual app code. However, I'm getting a production build right here. It's minified. Let me quit the batch job, set node env to development, and then rerun our watch. Honestly, it should be even faster now that it's in development mode. So now we have our development. And as you see, because it's not extracting the text for the CSS is now being included. But if I come over here into public build and I just nuke that folder entirely and come back here and refresh, I'm still getting the built app.js. And if I come over here and make a change, hit Control-S, built in 59 milliseconds, refresh, and now it's built. And that's it. So how do we use this? Well, let's go back to our page. Let's go back to our view that we're going to be rendering. So if I come over here and open up my views index pug, remember how we have in our server.js, we have these two variables, use external styles and script root. Well, we're going to be using these to include in the bundle, to include in our HTML and CSS. And so it should start making sense how this works. So up here at the top, I'm going to say if use external styles, then render link rel equals style sheet, href, comma href, equals /build /app.css. So what this does is if use external style sheets is true, it will reference the extracted CSS from the result of a production build. If it's false, it will only have to include the styles from the actual bundled JavaScript. Now down here, all the way at the end of the body, I'm going to say script source equals script root, which is this variable right here, which if we're in development is pointing to our development server that we just launched, or if we're in production, points to our build folder. So source equals script root plus vendor.js. Now, when you use the Commons chunk plugin to extract things into a vendor file, make sure you always include your vendor file first. Then we include our entry point by doing /app.js. And honestly, besides something, I guess I can throw the last line of code that we will ever need, or almost ever need. Actually, let's just finish this file. This file is very easy. We want to go ahead and I want to add a meta attribute. Name equals viewport, content equals width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0. So here I'm just configuring how this page will scale depending on what kind of mobile browser or mobile device you might be using. And the last thing I'll do is I'll replace this entire h1 with hash mount. And that's going to result in a div being created with an ID of mount. So if I come over here and refresh... Oh, my server isn't running. Well, it'd be a good idea to run my server while we're testing this. Open command prompt, gulp server run. Which, that's not the right one. I always forget. What are you called? Server dev. Actually, that should be client dev, not client watch. Whatever. We have the server running now. Now let's see what happens to our page. We run our page. Check that out. We have our div with the ID of mount. We have our scripts. We don't have an external style. And in our console, we get error... Oh, because I misspelled localhost. That was stupid of me. I'm sure you guys caught that. All right, refresh, which restarts the server. Hello from client, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And look at that. Our styles are working. I can come in here and look at the element for our body and see that in client.scss, as you see, source maps are working. We have a background of EE, and then our H1s are colored red. So now we are importing our styles and our scripts. So our styles are coming in through the app bundle. Again, just for development reasons. But they will render out just fine. And furthermore, it will support hot reloading, which we'll do in the next video. There are a couple other things I want to do in this video, though. I want to implement... I first want to change that task name. So let's stop all of our Gulp tasks. I first want to change that task name in our Gulp file to client run. And I also now want to create a server client clean. So I'm going to do Gulp task client :clean. And client clean will work just like this clean worked. So we'll do CB goes into, and we'll just rimref, and then, well, I'll just copy and paste that. Why not? We'll do public /build. So that's how we will clean the client. For the build, we're going to do, I'll break this out again to make it easier to read. We're going to do gulp.series, and we'll do client clean, and then followed by build client. And then for our run, we'll do the same thing. We'll do gulp.series, and we'll pass in client clean and watch client. And there we go. that will clean out our client directory every time we do a build, which is a good thing to do. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to combine the two. I want to combine client run and server run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to create a new section all the way down here at the bottom. And I'll scroll through this Gulp file here at the end. And I'll do run tasks. And I'm simply going to say gulp.task, and I'm going to say run. And then I'm going to say gulp.parallel, server run, client run. And there we go. By running the Gulp task run, we will start up an entire development environment. Let's go ahead and make sure that works first. I'm going to set node env to development, in case I didn't already. And I'm going to say gulp run. And we get an error. No task called server run. Did I miss? Oh, it's dev. It's dev is what it is. Okay, I'm changing the word run to dev everywhere. I very much apologize, but I get mixed up between 3-letter words. And then I'm going to change client run to client dev. There we go. That makes a whole lot more sense. So there should be no instance of run, besides run server and run server tests. There should be no other instance of run in this file. They should all be dev instead. So now I can type in gulp dev, and I should get the ability to watch the server being ran, and the ability to watch the client, and the client being ran, all in one page. Come back here, refresh, and it looks like everything is working. Come here into my client, maybe change the background to a darker color, hit Control S, refresh, it's now a darker color. Come in here to the server and say console log hey. Come back here to the console and check that out. Hey was outputted. Remove that console log and it gets restarted. And there we go. That is our workflow for working with both our client and the server. Just got to do gulp dev, and you have instantly an entire development environment set up, the server running, and you are ready to start working on the project. Like I promised, the last thing I'll do is I will scroll through the Gulp file in case people are having issues and want to compare code. So this is almost it for the Gulp file. Actually, this should pretty much be it for the Gulp file, now that I think about it. We have a little bit more to do in Webpack config, but that'll be next video. So let's scroll down. We have our includes, our loading of the plugins. We have server clean, server build, server watch, server dev, server test, and server test dev. Then we have our internals, our functions that actually perform all the work. Then we have our client code. We have our console stats, which I basically remove everything. Whoops, that's not how you spell timings. I basically turn off everything but the timings for the stats. So we only see time, X amount of seconds. We have our client clean, our client build, and our client dev. And then our internals, our build client and our watch client. And then we have our dev tasks, which right now is just one, dev. And all that does is run the server dev and the client dev. That's it. So generally speaking, for a production build, all you need to do is, well, we can work on a production build later. Actually, I guess we can go ahead and just come down here and do, actually, I'll just do, call this other tasks. I'll do gulp.task build. Gulp task build will simply do gulp parallel, server build, client build. And there you go. If you get this package from a Git repository, all you would need to do is an npm install and a gulp build, and you will have your client build and your server build. As long as your node environment is set to production, then you are good. And with that, I think that's the end of this video. In the next video, we will take a look at hot reloading our modules. And that's where Webpack the Webpack dev server really shows how powerful it is. And we'll see you guys then.